All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Chimney Creek Townhome presentation this evening. So this evening's presentation will be about our community wildfire protection plan specific to your plan unit. My name is Dory Dalton. I'm the wildland specialist and a firefighter for the Genesee Fire Protection District. And I've also been a community member here in Genesee for the last 10 years. This evening, you will hear from myself, Nancy Balter, Becky Smith, and Chris Garlasco from the Genesee Fire and Safety Committee. This presentation is recorded and will be posted later for viewing on the Genesee Fire Rescue website. I've set aside an hour and a half for this presentation. I'm going to ask that you be muted during the presentation. Anytime you have a question, please put it in the chat box. The chat box will be monitored and we will answer your questions at the end of the presentation. All right. So what is the CWPP? So our plan was updated from the 2008 report. It was an 18-month project that was completed in April of 2021 in partnership with the Forest Stewards Guild. Our CWPP is a tool for Genesee Fire Rescue, land managers, residents, and HOAs to help prioritize projects to make the Genesee Fire Protection District safer and more prepared for wildfire emergencies. Please remember this is a snapshot in time. The project included data that was collected by driving all the roads and a general on-the-ground assessment of risk factors. We modeled the potential wildfire behavior under the 60th, 90th, and 97th percentile fire weather conditions. And these are conditions that occurred in our district about 40%, 10%, and 3% of the days between June and October, the period that was frequently associated with large fires in Colorado. And it was from 2009 to 2019. And our weather parameters came from data collected at the Lookout Mountain Remote Automatic Weather Station and fuel moisture conditions from Fire Family Plus. When we mention red flag warning days, that means fire weather conditions are present, and they include warm temperatures, very low humidity, and stronger winds. And they're expected to combine to produce an increased risk of fire danger. So the higher the percentage, the higher the fire danger. The 97th percentile fire weather conditions modeled in the CWPP would qualify for a red flag warning, and they're similar to conditions that occurred during the Elephant Butte fire in July of 2020 southwest of our district. Genesee Fire Protection District experienced 5 red flag warnings in 2019, 16 red flag warnings in 2020. During the 2021 season, there were 3 red flag warning days in November and 4 in December. During that time, there were multiple wildfires, including the most destructive wildfire in Colorado history on December 30th. And so far, up through May 13th of this year, there has been the most red flag warning days ever recorded for Colorado. The conditions for the 90th percentile fire weather scenarios would constitute a red flag warning day only if widespread thunderstorms were predicted for the area, with a possibility of lightning strikes.
It's also be recorded at the website, Genesee Fire Department website.
Everyone make sure that you're muted, please. Thank you. Conditions used for the 60th percentile weather scenarios have higher fuel moistures and lower wind speeds. And this evening, again, we'll be talking about the Chimney Creek Plan Unit, and you can see it's right here to the north and eastern side of our district. Okay, and the addresses are included there on the right side of the screen. Okay, the plan units were created along HOA boundaries and property boundaries with considerations of roadways and topographical features in mind. So there are 3 ways that wildfires threaten our home. The first way being radiant heat. And radiant heat is the energy that's transferred through the air to other objects when materials burn. If a house receives enough radiant heat for a sufficient time, it will ignite without flames contacting it. Sometimes radiant heat can break the glass and windows, allowing windblown embers to enter the house. Even if the radiant exposure isn't large enough or long enough to result in ignition, it can preheat surfaces, making them more vulnerable to ignition from exposure to flames and embers. Even vegetation and other fuels located away from the house can pose a threat. Ember showers. Embers are the most common cause of home ignition. They are light enough to be blown through the air and can result in the rapid spread of wildfire by spotting. And that's in which embers are blown ahead of the main fire and they start other fires. And then we have direct flame contact, and that's when fire reaches your home through the tree crowns or along the surface of the ground and directly touch your home. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about the Chimney Creek Plan Unit hazard rating, but before that, I need everyone to understand that the entire Genesee Fire Protection District is 95% more likely to have a wildfire as compared to the rest of the U.S. This puts us at an extreme hazard rating. The ratings of the different plan units are relative to one another, and they're based on 4 variables. And I'm going to start with fire risk. And again, your plan unit is outlined in the dark black. Okay. And based on the information for fire risk, this is based on fire behavior, which includes wind, temperatures, and low humidity, the topography, location, and fuel. And this is rated at a low hazard rating. And then we talk about suppression challenges for your hazard rating. And again, it will be based on fire behavior. And these would represent challenges that could arise getting our equipment into the area to fight the fire. That's why it's important to make sure you have cleared the roadside vegetation. The optimal driveway and roadside clearance is 13.5 feet high by 20 feet wide. And these are based on Jefferson County recommendations and the size of our apparatus. And you can see here again, you are rated at a low hazard rating. Then the third variable you can see here on the map is your evacuation hazards. And again, based on fire behavior, it's based on the location of the fire, the visibility during that time, the width of your road, the type of the evacuation notice. Is it the entire community evacuating or just part? Are residents exiting as resources are entering and there's two-way traffic? Are you on a non-survivable road? Again, you can see that you are rated at a low hazard rating. And then we move to home ignition zone hazards. Okay. And that's going to include things like your roof, your siding, and your defensible space around your home. Okay. And now a defensible space is that 100-foot circle around your home. And if your home is situated on a slope that bumps out to 150 feet, and defensible space is the buffer you create between your home and the grass, trees, and shrubs and any wildland area that surrounds it. The space is needed to slow or stop the spread of wildfire and help protect your home from catching fire, either from embers, direct flame contact, or radiant heat. And proper defensible space also provides us, the firefighters, a safe working area to defend your home. We, the firefighters, have to have space around your house to make a stand to prevent fire from reaching your house. Think about your house. Would we, the firefighters, be able to defend your home without putting our lives at risk? We would like to see fire on the ground in mitigated areas where we have a chance to stop the fire and not allow fire to go from tree to tree because trees are too close and dense or have ladder fuels under them, because we cannot fight fires in trees. And your home ignition zone hazard rating is at an extreme. When we combine all of those variables, Chimney Creek, your overall hazard rating is at a moderate rating. Okay, some of the specific things the CWPP made note of for your risk, where you have a high housing density, your buildings are situated mid-slope and on ridge tops, and you do have a locked gate. There's siding and decking materials that are flammable, as is much of the landscaping. You have dense forest on Ski Hill that carries a significant fire risk. There are narrow driveways and parking areas without turnarounds that could be an obstacle for fire engines. Almost all the homes are at risk of exposure and radiant heat and spotting. About 50% of the unit is at risk of passive or crown fire activity, and very few roads have potentially non-survivable conditions, which that's a good thing. And those last 3 bullets are under the 90th percentile fire weather conditions modeled. All right. So again, this is based on modeling. On the left, we have flame lengths that were modeled. And again, you can see here is your plan unit outlined in blue. All right. And these are based on 90th percentile fire weather behavior. Most of this plan unit to the north is peach, which indicates a peach color, sorry, which indicates that the conditions would be able to be controlled mostly with a hand line. But it's different down here in the southern portion. You can see a lot of the darker reds down here at the bottom. And so that means there could be serious to significant control issues, which are dependent on fire behavior, basically the wind and the weather and your topography. And it has a potential to be difficult to control with hand crews and equipment. And so an indirect attack would have to be made from a distance. All right. And then if you look over here under your 90th percentile weather, this has to do with crown fire potential. You can see the majority of the plan unit again is this yellow and this like orange color with this little bit of red right here. So the majority of your plan unit is really susceptible to surface fire, which is an example right here where the surface fuels are burning along the ground, which then to become a passive crown fire, that would include those ladder fuels under the trees, which would go up into the trees because they're spread through the surface fuels on the ground. And that's why we talk about those ladder fuels. There is some potential for some active crown fire. There is dense forest to the south. Okay. Again, these were modeled under the 90th percentile fire weather conditions. And please know that Genesee Fire Rescue will fight the fire until fire behavior makes it unsafe for us to do so. All right, so here we have two neighborhoods. The neighborhood on the left is a Waddle Canyon neighborhood, and you can see not every home was destroyed. This was a home that, or these were homes that were destroyed by embers. You can see many of the trees around the homes were not bothered by the embers, but it was the ember contact with the homes that burned these homes down. And then here we have a neighborhood in Superior that was destroyed by embers and radiant heat. And when we talk about 0 to 5, that's where this is going to come into play and be really important to start taking care of your home first. Here is a property. This is from the Cold Spring Fire. This property did participate in a program out of Boulder that does home assessments. This property focused on breaking up that fuel continuity in their zone 2 so that the fire had a place to drop and there wasn't a continuous line of trees that went right to the home and lit these structures on fire. So science has proven there are steps we can take as homeowners and community members that do lower our risks and in many cases lower our neighbors' risks as well. All right, so the information I'm getting ready to share with you is based on the Colorado State Forestry Service, their latest guidelines in science. So when we talk about crown spacing between trees, it's recommended to be 10 feet between crowns. And when we say crowns, that we mean the most outer reaching portions of the branches, not the tops of the trees. Okay, and please remember if it's on a slope, that spacing goes up. And then when we talk about limbing, we talk about limbing 6 to 10 feet up or a third of the total height of the tree, whichever is less. And that means the outer portion, we're not talking at the trunk. Again, we're talking these outer branches. So if this is limbed up 6 feet, a 6-foot person should be able to walk underneath this tree. Okay. And then we've mentioned, or I've mentioned ladder fuels a lot. When we think about ladder fuels, we look at these trees. We can see this tree has limbs growing pretty close to these things growing underneath it. This is all fuel growing underneath this tree. When these fuels catch on fire, their flame lengths can be 2 to 3.5 times the height of the vegetation itself. So as the surface fires come along, catch these things on fire, and then they go up the tree, and that's why the trees catch and they create a crown fire. So we're asking that you limb under these trees, right? So that there's nothing within their branches and that they are limbed up. And then we talk about another way to decrease that fire intensity is 5 to 30 feet out from the structure is to mow the grass to 4 inches. Again, we want fire to drop from the trees to the ground and slow down before it reaches your structure. If you're on sloped ground, we would recommend that you bump zone 2 out to 45 feet. So as you look at this, this is your home exposure risk due to overlapping home ignition zones, a potential exposure to short and long range spotting from embers, and your potential exposure to radiant heat. When we look at the top map right here, this is based on 90th percentile fire weather conditions. Almost a third of your homes are at risk to high exposure or have a high rating of exposure risk. And then you can see here about a little less than a quarter is at a moderate risk. When we bump up that fire weather behavior to 97th percentile, you can see down here that your risk on the high side bumps out a little bit more than a third, and then your extreme comes up to almost a quarter. So, and we're talking about your risks due to these things right here that I read to you earlier. So there are some things you can do to get yourself ready for one of these events. Okay. Creating a 5-foot perimeter around your home with no vegetation. Okay. And that means you can see here that, and that includes your deck, right? Like you want to go on the outside. It's like if you're a bird and you're looking down on your home and there's a 5-foot line drawn all the way around your home. Okay. You want to make sure you're keeping on top of those pine needles from your roof and your gutter. And if you have a complex roof, all those little areas where the dried leaves and needles tend to gather. You want to make sure you don't have anything flammable underneath your deck. Again, live or dead vegetation and storing items. Okay, and that also goes for on top of your deck. The things on your deck should be non-flammable. Please don't leave your cushions out. Bring them in if you're not using them. Houses do catch fire from that. Again, 80 to 90% of our homes ignite due to embers rather than radiant heat. When you replace things on your home, consider using fire-resistant exterior materials. And I know that due to the new guidelines that that's a requirement now. So for anything on the outside. All right. So here are some things that some photos taken from your area. One of the things that's really important for you to do together is to work with your neighbors because you all have overlapping exposures. Your zones are all overlapping. So it's important to have those conversations with your neighbors. So these photos show a lot of fuel continuity. Okay, right. So again, these trees need to be limbed, right? And here you can see juniper bush underneath. Junipers are highly flammable. If you were to look at, lift these up, I guarantee you there's some dead vegetation underneath there. We want to clean that out so it doesn't have that opportunity to ignite, which again would lead to igniting the tree and going up the tree. Okay. And then on this side, you can see how low the limbs are to the home. Again, this tree is very close to the home. So just thinking about that, the vegetation surrounding your home. All right. On this photograph, this is all about that immediate zone around your house. And when I talk about that, that's from your direct siding edge out. The edge of your siding will be considered 0 out 5 feet. Okay. And it's recommended that there's no vegetation there. The aspens are fine where they are. They contain a lot of moisture. They help raise the humidity level. They are more resilient to fire, but they're not fireproof. I would recommend that once these trees outlive their life, which is about 50 to 60 years, that they just wouldn't be planted in that zone, that they would be planted out further. Again, the juniper, right? I would recommend removing the juniper, right? Anything this close. And then down here, you can see, I think there may be some rock here, but again, we have these landscape timbers. And then with landscape timbers, since they're directly touching your home, we would recommend that there's no vegetation around them. Again, if you held a match to this, it would not ignite, but there are little cracks and crevices where embers could land and have that potential to ignite as they sit in there and they smolder. These are some examples of some deck vegetation. Here you have lattice. Lattice is really very flammable. It's attached to the side of the home. It's attached to the underneath of the deck. Even when you get your decks replaced, unless you choose to do steel joists and supports, they're wood. So again, given enough time, it can ignite, which leads directly to your home. You can see all the needles on the ground, these ladder fuels right next to the deck. Again, lots of vegetation around this deck as well. Okay, you know, and I think about the proximity of the windows and radiant heat. I mentioned that earlier. Again, just thinking about, you know, these trees really need limbed up, and they're pretty close to the home as well. Let's see here. In these photos, again, we have limbing and we have this low vegetation here. If it's a juniper, I would recommend that it be removed. There's a house back here, and this is fuel continuity. You know, the fire, if it starts on the ground here and goes up this tree, it's going to go from tree to tree to tree to tree to the house. I don't know where I'm going to stand to help put out the fire. So just really think about that fuel continuity. And then up here, there's a lot of vegetation along this roadway. This is set back pretty far, I realize that, but we would recommend that you think about any trees that are within 10 feet of the road, and thinking about wind during a wildfire event. You know, thinking about this tree right here, this is a big tree. You know, if we're having wind and it's blowing, you know, blowing sideways, right? That flame length could be pretty big, okay? And it could impede even the egress right here, because I can see the gate right here. So again, a lot of fuel right up next to the house. I understand screening, you know, start out low and bring it up. It's not as bad as you think. Okay. All right. So the top right here, you know, this has some rocks right here. This is a really great start. The only thing I want to mention again is the cushions out. Just take those in if you're not using them, and just bring them out when you use them. The gap under the garage door. One of the things as I drove through your plan unit, you really want to check your weather stripping around your door, not only on the bottom, but on the sides. Does your door need adjusted? Do you need new weather stripping? A lot of times in the corner, animals chew it. We just don't want any embers to have the opportunity to intrude on your space and ignite anything in your garage. And then also I noticed that a lot of you have the the little storage doors between some of your units. Again, check the weather stripping around those as well. So, and here we have a home that has some rock near their home. That's great. It looks like you maybe want to check to make sure it is 5 feet, but that's, you know, again, just making sure that that you have this to, if there's a direct flame, right, it's going to come along the ground, and then it's not going to have anywhere to go. It's not going to be able to reach the siding because here we have rocks. And that's the purpose of the immediate zone, the 0 to 5, is we've got the short grass, it's in the grass, it comes, and then it does not have anywhere to go once it hits no vegetation. And then on this home right here, you can see these vents. I want to encourage everyone to check your vents. You want to make sure your vent, if it has a flap, that due to the age of our homes, you know, some of the flaps don't want to lay flat any longer. So make sure that the flaps are working properly. If you have a vent that's no longer in use, that you have it closed off permanently, you should check your laundry vent to make sure it's clear or cleaned out from that lint, because lint tends to build up in there and then holds the vent open a little bit. And again, if there are embers flying in the air, it's going to have that opportunity to ignite that lint and sit against the siding. And then also if you have vents with screening, the recommended screen size is 1/8 inch to keep embers out, and I am starting to see 1/16 as well. But check the size of your vent holes, the screen that's in there, including if you look up in your eave and your soffit, there should be vents or screens behind those as well. And again, it's 1/8 inch. All right. So as you look up, you know, to the south of you, you have Ski Hill, right? This is an area, you know, it's identified as a high risk, right? There's a lot of dense forestry in there. And just thinking about what can be done to help mitigate this, to lower not only the potential risk that you face from wildfire, but the other people in the district, you know, thinking about embers hitting that, and those kind of things. So this is a huge area. It's approximately above there. It's about 30 acres of dense forest. All right. So something else, I've driven through there and I know that all of your units have numbers. I want to ask you to check to see that they're reflective, just to make sure that we can find you in the smoke if it's smoky. Okay. So just make sure, go outside without lights on, shine a flashlight on your signs. I believe they're black with white numbers above your garage. Just check to do that if you would, again, so that we can find you in a medical emergency in the event of fire. Okay. All right. I am someone that does home assessments. You're in a little bit of a unique situation in that you share walls with neighbors. I can still do home assessments on multifamily dwellings. The only caveat is everyone that's in your dwelling has to agree to have one. So if that's something you're interested in, I definitely can help you out with that. When I perform an assessment, you do receive a report with photographs, with recommendations. I just report the recommendations. I do not make you do them. That is a choice. It's your property. You get to do that. So it is a certificated program. If you were to choose to follow the recommendations that I've made and identified, you can have me come back out and check to see that you've done that and receive a certificate of mitigation, which you can present to your insurance company to show the effort that you've made for mitigating your property. And it's also a great selling point. Your data is owned. I'm not affiliated with any insurance company. It's not shared. It's not even kept on or at the fire station. So if that's something you're interested in, the cost is $100. Evergreen Chart does the same program, Inter Canyon, Elk Creek, and we all charge $100 for this. You can find this information on our website. You can go to wildfireprepared.com if that's something you're interested in again. All right, so you've heard me mention non-survivable roads. And what I want to tell you about that is, again, this would mean that a portion of the road is adjacent to areas with those flame lengths that are greater than 8 feet under severe weather conditions. You want to think about this because you could have drivers stopped or trapped on these roadways, and you wouldn't have a good chance of surviving the radiant heat from fires with this type of intensity. Non-survivable conditions are more common along roads that are lined with thick forests, particularly with trees that have limbs all the way to the ground and or in abundant saplings and seedlings. And remember that flame lengths are generally 2 to 3 times the height of the fuel source. All right. So again, roadway mitigations, these are also based on the best available science in Colorado State Forest Service. So when things like this happen, we want to hope for the best, like the Elephant Butte fire, but plan for the worst, like when Cameron Peak fire happened and the Marshall fire happened. So some information about those fires. Elephant Butte fire, there were 130 firefighters, 56,000 gallons of water, 1,000 people evacuated, 54 acres were burned. It took 10 days to put out. No homes or lives were lost. Cameron Peak, there were about 1,000 firefighters, 20,000 people were evacuated, 469 structures were destroyed. No lives were lost. The Marshall fire, about 30,000 people were evacuated, 1,084 structures were lost, and there were 2 confirmed deaths. And I couldn't find any information about the number of firefighters. So remember that, you know, a lot of times you'll hear people say, if it's going to burn, why should I do anything? There's 3 reasons you should do that. Because you can increase your safe evacuation of that of your neighbor and for you, and you'll make a space for us, the first responders, right, to come in to take care of you. Remember that it's your home, right? It's filled with your things. And by doing these things, you can improve the chances of survival by doing defensible space work and roadside thinning. So this is what we want to avoid. The picture on the bottom left, this was taken from the fire in Paradise, someone trying to evacuate. And then you can see the pictures on the right are of some other fires that happened recently in California. All right. So again, on the left here, this overall map is the entire district in white, but this yellow, this is your plan unit, and then it's just over here blown up a little bit bigger. And you can see in your area, you really only have about 3 areas to look at. And they're tight little turn areas back where there's some shared driveways when I've driven back through there. And I'll give you some more specific information on it. So again, when we talk about mitigating roadways, this isn't similar to yours, but it was hard to get an example. We're talking about making a 15-foot box in that area as a minimum. So what that means is we would like it to be clear 15 feet across, right? And then if you have trees, to limb them up, right? 15 feet. Reason being so that we can drive through there with our apparatus and you can get out hopefully safely. Okay. And then Nancy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Dory. So all of the things that Dory talked about roadways also apply to your private driveways. One, you know, you don't know where the fire is going to start. You don't know when you will get an evacuation notice. So you do want to be sure if the fire starts somewhere close to you, and or there are high winds. Let's say it's in the on the ski hill, which is heavily forested, and the winds are blowing embers towards your house and igniting things around your house. You want to be sure you can get out of your driveway. So the same things apply to your driveways, to be sure that you can get out. And as Dory said, also be sure that you have a reflective sign posted for your house so that emergency responders can find it. And God forbid, if your home is destroyed, that they have addresses for what's been destroyed so that they can let you know. Next slide.
Working on it.
Yeah, I know there's a little lag here. Gotta love the internet.
I know. So weird. Oh, wait, now what? Oh, that's right. Okay.
So this is an example of if that tree went up and you hadn't evacuated yet, the garage is right there, winds blowing in that direction, you may not be able to exit your garage. So that would be an example of where you wanted to limb up and potentially remove a lot of the fuel that was on the side of where your garage and driveway is. Next slide. While we're waiting, I just want to point out that one of the areas of non-survivable roadway is right where you guys exit onto Genesee Trail. that there are a number of large trees there, and it would, in a perfect world, you would get rid of some of those so that you were not at risk of not being able to get out of the Chimney Creek community onto Genesee Trail. So this is modeled evacuation times. These assume that the entire district gets an evacuation notice at the same time, and showing 1 car per residential address or 2 cars per residential address. It also assumes that everybody is home and evacuating at the same time. You might think that's worst case scenario. It actually isn't. It doesn't take into account the fact that your egress could be impeded by a lot of smoke in the area, the fact that you're panicked, people deciding they should pull over and take pictures, or accidents. So it's not really a worst case scenario. You see that even under a situation where 1 car evacuates, it could still take you close to an hour to get onto I-70. The other thing I want to point out 2 things. One, I want to point out that it makes a big difference whether everybody takes 1 car or 2 cars. And I would plead with you, if you get an evacuation notice, that you only take 1 car, not to take 2 cars. It will help everyone in the community to be able to better evacuate. The other thing I want to point out is that the entire fire protection district must evacuate to the north onto I-70. And this is potentially a huge risk. If that fire starts on the northern side of the fire protection district, it is possible that all of our egress onto I-70 is blocked. And we are in a situation right now where we must shelter in place. There is a big effort looking at building a purpose-built road that will let us evacuate to the south onto 74. It has big firefighting advantages in being able to defend the district from a fire coming that direction, and it gives us another way to evacuate the community. So even though you might think naively that, oh, we don't need that, we're close to I-70, there are fire scenarios where it could become essential. We're hoping never to be in a situation where everyone just has to shelter in place. Next slide. So these are our egress challenges. Even on Genesee Trail, we need to do some tree work on roadside trees in order to make it better survivable. We face the possibility of congestion and long evacuation times, and we have the issue that everybody is evacuating to the north. Next slide. It is extraordinarily important that you are prepared for an emergency. First of all, you need to get an alert to tell you to be prepared to evacuate or to evacuate. Jefferson County, until about a couple of weeks ago, used code red. They are now, and in other fires like Elephant Butte, there have been issues with code red. So Jefferson County has switched to a system called Lookout Alert. They say that everything has been ported from Code Red to Lookout Alert, but we would recommend that you go to Lookout Alert. You can get to it easily from your911.net and go ahead and re-enter your information. And you want to be contacted in every possible way. Your home number, if you have one, your cell phone number, texts, emails. Lookout Alert will let you choose what kinds of alerts. If you just want evacuation and pre-evacuation notices, you can do that. If you want to be informed if there's a red flag day here, it will do that. If you want to know that severe weather is coming, it will do that. Please, even if you were signed up for Code Red, go to Lookout Alert and get get all these ways of notifying you selected. If you have a caregiver at home for a child or elderly or anything else, also include those numbers so that those people are also notified. Lookout Alert is part of the Smart 911 system. Smart 911 lets you enter a lot of personal information. For example, do you have a pet at home? It lets you enter medical information about yourself or other family members, where gas shutoff is, where water shutoff is in your home, etc. It's a great idea. We have never actively recommended that people do it. Dispatch from, if you call 911, has access to this information. But in checking with Genesee Fire and Highland Rescue, they don't automatically get that information. So it's a matter of your personal comfort level in terms of putting that kind of information online. Have an emergency, a family emergency plan. Not everybody is going to be home when you get a evacuation notice. Cell phone towers may be down. You may not be able to communicate with each other easily. Have a default place where everyone in the family will meet. Have a default person that people will communicate with, even if they can't communicate with each other. Talk to your neighbors. Do you have a pet at home? If you're not home, is somebody going to go in and get that pet for you? If you have latchkey kids at home who can't evacuate on their own, is a neighbor going to take responsibility for that? And what can you do together as a neighborhood to modify your risk? I live in a different kind of community in Genesee, but we just did a lot of tree work on the roadside in order to make our evacuation road for our little road safer. So those are the kinds of things that we would like you to do. If it's a red flag day, and again, you can Lookout Alert will alert you that it's a red flag day, or you'll see the sign at either of the exits going out of the community, or you can go to the Genesee Fire website and see it. And Dora usually also posts something on Nextdoor Genesee. If it's a red flag day, be prepared to leave immediately if you get an evacuation notice. We have all seen how, with the winds we get, how quickly wildfire can spread. So if you think, yeah, I know, and I should take this, and I should take this, and I should take this, get it together. be prepared to leave immediately. Next slide, please. So this is a brochure from Rotary Wildfire Ready. Rotary Wildfire Ready is a function of, or a group that was established by the Evergreen Rotary Group. They have phenomenal educational brochures. Dory's going to give you the link to get these brochures, but these are the kinds of things that should be in your emergency go bag that you can just grab on your way out. I would recommend that on top of the go bag, you have a list of things that you are going to grab at the last minute if you have time. But if you get an evacuate now notice, please, as soon as you possibly can, evacuate. But we would recommend you have a go bag with whatever you can have ready to go. If you know that you're going to evacuate down to somebody's house down the hill, consider putting things like the clothing, the medications that you would need for 3 or 4 days until you could get back in your house down there. And then just in your go bag is the things you will need to evacuate. Next slide. So this is really important. On the right side is what you should wear if you evacuate. Nothing synthetic. Synthetic materials will melt in heat. You want to be covered from head to toe to the extent you can. Hat, mask, pants, boots. Fortunately, we now all have N95 masks, or unfortunately, or K95 masks. Put all of that on the top of your go bag so that you can change into appropriate clothing when you evacuate. This, again, it's a Rotary Wildfire Ready, and you'll get the link for this pamphlet. If you have a prepare to evacuate, it talks about things you can do outside your home and inside your home to increase the survivability of your house. Don't do it if you have an evacuate immediately notice. But if you have a prepare to evacuate notice, that is the time to look at these kinds of things. For us in our family, we have a bag down the hill at our daughter's house. We have a go bag with things like flashlight and whistle and water. And then the clothes we're going to throw on before we leave. And then the list of, like, take the computer if you can. Take cell phone chargers if you can. And it'll very much depend upon what the circumstances are in terms of whether you want to take the time to do that or you just want to get the hell out. The other thing I want to say is, don't wait for an evacuation notice to evacuate. If you see smoke, if you have a concern, don't call 911 and ask them. They won't necessarily give you the right information. There are worse things than evacuating when you don't need to. Just leave if you have any concerns. The next issue at the bottom of this is how you get information about what is going on. In past presentations, I have recommended mymountaintown.com. It's the last thing on that bottom. The person who runs that, it's actually out of Conifer, but she is very well connected. She tells me she never takes a vacation. She's always connected. And it's a good way. I used it just even to get information about the Marshall Fire. I am encouraged by the fact that the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department has definitely beefed up their public information group, including somebody who was top-notch over the years and then moved out of the area, has come back. And she is committed to bringing back Jefferson County as the place to go, either their Twitter account or their Facebook account, to get up to date information. I know her personally. I have a lot of confidence in her, and fingers crossed that that becomes the place to go. Do I have another slide?
Trying to get there.
I know.
I think I have the next slide.
Okay. It's like a
So I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Becky Smith. I am a member of the Genesee Foundation Fire and Safety Committee. And while we're waiting for that slide to come up, the reason we're doing these presentations is to educate you on what the CWPP has identified as the major risks, especially for your particular area of the fire district. And it's a lot. If you're like other people who've heard this presentation, you might be feeling overwhelmed right now. There's a lot that isn't necessarily in your control, but there are things that you can do. And hopefully you've also heard this evening what some of the resources are if you want to learn more, and some ideas for you to try and tackle in cooperation with your HOA and cooperation with your neighbors. One of the other reasons we're doing these presentations is to encourage you to schedule a neighborhood walk. And this is an opportunity for you to meet Dory face to face if you haven't already, and to get out with your neighbors and walk your street, look at what's going on around your building and how your defensible space overlaps with the buildings next door, and to talk about what you can do and what Dory's recommendations are. And it's also an opportunity for you to have those conversations that Nancy was just talking about. Get to know what people's situations are. Do they have a pet? Are they out of the house during the day? Do they need help? And maybe you need help, and let people know and be there for each other. So that's not a topic that you normally have when you're at the mailbox, but scheduling one of these walks is a good time to do that. Next slide, please, Dory. So what we need from you is for you to contact Dory and schedule it. And that's really just about all there is. You will have to get a hold of your neighbors, and that's your neighborhood is however you define it. So if you have people's emails, you can let them know once you've got it scheduled with Dory. If you don't have their contact information, we can give you ideas on how to put together a flyer to either put at the mailboxes or to slip under people's doors. So her email is on the slide there. And one of the other benefits of scheduling this neighborhood walk, and we've seen this over the past year, when folks do this walk and they see what they can do after talking with Dory and talking to each other, they go out and do it. There are things you can do this weekend if you want. Again, I don't know your HOA situation and what you have permission to do, but there are definitely things that are within your reach. And the two trees pictured on this slide illustrate that. The tree on the left, if you've been paying attention, you can see all the problems with it. It's got ladder fires with the tall grasses, and it's got a lot of low dead limbs that need to be removed to be safe. I mean, it's a beautiful tree, but it is a fire danger. The tree on the right is from Nancy's street when they just did some mitigation this last week or so, and that got everything cleaned up, and that's a much safer situation now. Now, I want to mention, you can see the slash there on the ground. If you are able to do some work and clean up some trees, Dory is hosting a slash drop-off at the fire station on July 31st. 30th, thank you. So if you have branches and stuff that you don't know how to get rid of otherwise, you can drop them off on July 30th. And then I just want to mention again, Dory mentioned it earlier, but if you want details about your building and your home, talk about where you've got gaps in the siding that could be a danger with embers flying in, to talk about those gaps into the doorway, her recommendations for your landscaping. To get those kind of details, schedule an appointment with her to do the home assessment. She'll give you everything you need to know to harden your facility. The next slide, please. And so this last slide is just going to list some resources and some websites, and those will all be included in the document that Dory will provide. She's going to put a link in the chat, but this is just an example of some really great, very thorough, very reliable information. And with that, Dory, I'm going to hand it back to you.
All right, thanks, Becky. Sorry about the delay. All right, so before we stop, I'm going to ask that you take a poll for me. It's got 6 questions. They're all multiple choice. It's very painless. All right, let's see here. I'm going to launch it. And it should be on your screen right now. And this just helps us know how we can be better at this, the information you give us. If there's some information on here that you didn't think was helpful or something we could have added to be helpful, put it in the chat box to help us for future presentations. We would really appreciate it. All you do is you pick your answer and then you scroll down on the right. And just so you know that on our website, I have information about my upcoming slash drop off. I also have the Jefferson County slash drop off dates listed. They have multiple places that you can take slash and drop it off. So. We usually have the poll go for about 3 minutes. It doesn't normally take too terribly long. So I have a timer on my end. I don't know if you have one on yours. So it's been up for about a minute. Thank you for participating. I do appreciate it. We all do. All right, in about 45 seconds, I will close the poll. Thank you to those of you that participated in it. I do appreciate it. Again, if there's anything you need from us, just let us know and we will start with Q&A as soon as I close. If you, well, I'm going to share a link and I have put it in the chat box already. You can just click on it and it will open in another tab on your computer, and on there it shows you how to get to me, how to get to the website. If you haven't looked at the CWPP, I highly recommend it. If you did not attend the wiry presentation where you filled out the fire household survey, there's a presentation about the results from that on there. There's so much on that website. All right, I'm going to end the poll so we can have a conversation. And I think it's going to ask me another question. Okay. All right. It's all yours, Chris.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Garlasco. I'm also with the Genesee Foundation Fire and Safety Committee, and we'll go through some of the questions you have tonight. I think one of the first ones that came up is to go back over that, what's that 95th percentile mean with some of those charts, Dory?
Are we talking about the fire risk? Like that?
Well, you mentioned that there were things that looked for the 90th percentile, the 95th percentile.
Absolutely. Okay. So we're talking about red flag conditions, and 97th percentile is the highest, right? Percentile fire conditions. And that's just, again, talking about the temperatures are generally higher. We have some pretty strong winds, and the humidity is pretty low. And those are some of the conditions we had on the Elephant Butte fire. So thinking about that, we have 97th percentile quite often in the summer, not to say that it doesn't happen now. The 90th percentile fire weather conditions, that's going to be the same, but again, it's going to be just a tad bit lower with those lightning strikes could be in the area. So it's just different levels of humidity, wind, dryness, those things combining for fire potential.
And maybe also mention again, so what's a red flag day?
Oh,
And
okay.
how can we check in and see if there's a red flag warning?
Absolutely. So again, those red flag days, it's really been very unique these last few years, given truly we've had over 80 in the state of Colorado so far this year. Last year, we didn't have them till November and December. So again, it has to do with our moisture, right? Our moisture level, it has to do with winds, and it has to do with temperature. So that's how we get the red flag. It's been, again, very unique and different, given that we're having them in the winter now, we're having them in the spring. Thursday here, it was in the 70s, and we had a red flag day and a winter storm warning. So, think about that. The wind is generally one of those things, and then the really dry air, the humidity. So think about that. And then I'm sorry, Chris, I've been talking so much, I forgot what else you asked me about the red flag. Oh, where you can find it out. Sorry. Okay, you can find it out at the Jefferson County. You can, or on the sheriff's website. You can look on your local weather. I know I've looked on Fox 31 and 9 News. They both have fire weather warnings on there. You can look out of the weather in Boulder. I do try and post it on Nextdoor. It's not live on the website, our website, because we get our website through a grant. So, but many of the websites have live, and you can Google it. You can listen on the radio. You can look on the internet. So there you go.
And
Yeah,
you
it's
can
also interesting.
Yeah, you can also get lookout alert.
Yeah, I do.
Send you if there's a red flag day.
Yep.
Right. So it's great that now many of our news stations are starting to pick that up and talk about it in the evening weather report.
Yep.
And if you check off enough getting those alerts, and you have that, you sign up for the lookout alert app on your phone, you're actually downloading the Smart 911 app. And that little green box that you saw, that icon back there in the pages of the presentation, is what the app actually looks like for your cell phone. And when you go, you can download that onto your cell phone, but it's much easier to log in, to create a login, or if you had a code red, You will usually take the same login as the code red and do all the checking on whether or not your information is up to date and everything. You to do that on your desktop and go through all the decisions you want to make, how much information you want to give. And but then you'll have the app itself on your phone and linked with your phone, and you'll get those alerts. Now, Kara had some really good points about how difficult this is in a townhome HOA like Chimney Creek is faced with. And so a couple points, like when you're going around, you're looking, and the homeowners only own that home structure, but you're trying to make decisions about your open space. You do need to work through your HOA on some of those things. But Dory, you might mention, how do you handle doing those assessments then when one homeowner calls you, but it's a whole row of 4 or 5 homes?
Absolutely. So I've done some assessments here in the foundation. We have Ridge 1, 2, and 3. And I've done all the buildings in Ridge 1. There were 7 buildings, and each building had 4 families, 4 different homes in it. And so I was able to do the outside. So I'm not really sure on the rules for you all, but on those, the HOAs own everything from the siding out. And so based on that, the HOA made the decision to have me come and do it. And so we did not need to have each individual homeowner say that I could come and do it, because I wasn't going in the structure where you own. I was looking at the outside of the structure. And one of the things that the HOA did is they shared all the reports, right? They let everyone see my recommendations and what I found. So that's how we did it in that instance. But again, the HOA came together and they just had me do it and then shared that information. Now, not all of the townhomes, that was Ridge 1, and Ridge 2 and 3 did not agree to do that. So, it was them, and that Ridge 1 townhomes also has a little CWPP committee. So they came together and made that decision. So and it's hard. It's, hard, but.
Well, it's looking good because Lori mentioned that you've got a wildfire committee, and that's fabulous. And maybe a few more of you will join or tune in, and you can help make these decisions for your townhomes. So that's really what it takes, is you get a group of people who start talking and you start becoming more active. And that's wonderful.
But, and I want to say that, not everyone was excited that I was climbing around, and, because I look under your decks and things, and they gave them, plenty of warning, and they could come out. I had one of the HOA members with me the entire time I did them. I'm supposed to be with some, like a homeowner, and I said, you need to be out there with me every single time so that you see the findings that I'm finding. And then the homeowners were invited to join me, and probably I had at least one homeowner from each building. And it was a great conversation. Not everybody was happy with the recommendations that I shared, and that was okay. Again, I'm not making decisions. I'm the deliverer of information. What you choose to do with that information to reduce your wildfire risk is yours. I just share it with you. But overall, it was a really great experience. And I'm going to tell you, they were out the same weekend Nancy's street was out, and that group came together and mitigated and cleaned up so much stuff. So it ended up being a positive thing. They're not doing all the recommendations that I made, but they are starting small and they're doing something. So anyway, it was good.
Yeah, that's great. There was another lookout alert question, which is fabulous because people are starting to think about it and tuning in, and kind of wondering about how this works. If there's a fire over an evergreen, how does someone in a different location receive it? But the idea is, is this is an alert for the entire county. And so it's the different emergency responders are working together on this and putting out alerts and also updating those alerts. So if the emergency, a wildfire, a blizzard or whatnot, is moving and changing and impacting different parts of the county, the alerts notify the different pods of the county as well. Dory, do you want to?
Sure, and we also have it set up in Genesee Foundation. Yes, they do have the pods, but they will be able to also notify plan units. We'll be able to do it that way. And then also we have the capability to do the wireless emergency alert, which is used often to grab and I'm not, this is not my area of expertise, but it's able to grab those cell numbers and those numbers in that particular alert area and send it to there as well. But yeah. So,
Can I, let me add to that. So I believe, with code red, you could set a radius to be alerted if there was a fire within a radius. It never worked. I don't think that that's a capability of Lookout Alert. I think they're going to send you evacuation notices and pre-evacuation notices. If you see smoke and you haven't gotten an evacuation notice and you want to know where it is, the plan is go to the Jeffco Twitter account and get the most up-to-date information. They are truly committed to make that the place to go. They've increased their public information officer staff in order to do that. Hopefully that's going to happen. The trouble with the WAS alert, you may have heard that it was used in the latest fire in Boulder, because if people were hiking in the area, even though they didn't get whatever their evacuation notice, I think their Everbright system, because they weren't signed up for it, but they're in the area, they got the WAS alert. It's the same thing as the Amber Alert system. It goes to everybody. And it's going to be confusing unless Jeffco has, along with it, and with this alert, go to this location, this website, to find out whether it applies to you or not and where the fire is. And I have not yet heard that Jeffco is set up to do that, but I suspect the public information officers are working on that to get that system to work the way it needs to work.
And if you're not a tweeter person, you can still go to the Jefferson County Sheriff's on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. The presentation at the CARE meeting, the recent CARE meeting, which is the Canyon area. Help me here. Canyon Area Residents for the Environment, CARE, and it's made up of all the HOAs in this Mount Vernon Canyon area. And they hold a meeting every month, and they recently invited Jeffco deputies to come talk about evacuation planning and other safety issues. And so they talked about how they will be going kind of polygon by polygon in terms of identifying the areas that they will send an alert out to. But there's a lot that goes into that. They also talked about how they're getting better coordinated with other emergency response entities to share information and use GPS information. So all of this is complex, and people are working it. And the idea is to be on your toes. If you see something happening, don't wait. Go ahead and make a decision to keep yourself safe and move on out of there and have that go bag ready. There are a few other questions too that have come up at previous meetings that you didn't ask at this one, that I might just bring up for, we have a few more minutes left to tonight's meeting that you might find interesting, and that is, you know, we often talk about the limbing of the trees and raking the pine needles. And there's also mowing that you can do to keep that grass short along your private drives, around your houses. So that's a really good strategy to work with your HOA to find out, can you do it? Will your HOA be able to bring a crew up? Do you have maintenance people that take care of your grounds? But these are good things for discussion. That's another very good mitigation strategy. The other thing is, I always bring this one up at every meeting. And a number of people will say, you know, I have a fire hydrant right next to my house. Does that make me safer? I don't have to worry about things as much. So Dory, take that one.
Yes. All right. So it's great that you have a fire hydrant if you have a structure fire, right? The thing is, with a wildfire, we have to be dynamic. We have to be able to move. And so we do not tether ourselves to a fire hydrant. What happens is, you know, we're moving around, we're fighting the fire. And when we need more water, we have a large apparatus called a tender, and the tender fills up with water. And then we go to them and they fill us up, and then we're able to go back out and fight the fire. So if we were tethered to a hydrant, it would impede your egress, and it would not allow resources to come in because of all of the wildland hose and whatnot across the road. So again, that's why we don't stay hooked to a hydrant during wildfire.
Another thing that has entered the conversation, especially in the past couple of years after the Waldo Canyon fire and the Marshall fire, is your insurance. And this is really a two-level parter, because you have your home insurance, and all the individuals, I hope that you're sitting down with your insurance agent and rethinking the value of your insurance policy. Have you updated that policy so that it really covers some of the replacement value that we're seeing in this 2020 inflation market? And it's also very important for your HOA to take a hard look at your HOA insurance policy. Here in Genesee, we're a member of the Community Association Group that provides a lot of educational tools for HOAs. And they have several insurance specialists and a whole committee that will give your HOA support and guidance, because there's a number of things that HOAs are figuring out now. For example, if a whole section of your HOA burns down, you've got individuals making the decision to collect the insurance money and maybe walk away. And so you really need to revisit your governing documents to see whether or not you want, as a community, to put in some language that dictates how long people need to make some of those decisions, and some of the safety aspects about making sure that at least the area around their home the debris is removed, and maybe some of the landscaping is at least leveled so it's not a safety hazard. So there's a whole aspect of this that you might ask your HOA board to take a harder look at, and go get that CAI help and support on some of those insurance issues.
And I agree. And there's great information. I have links and things on the website to some places, some different things to check out, but definitely update your inventory, take photos, open your cabinets, open your drawers, take those photos, load them to the cloud. It's really important. We always say we're going to do it, and we don't, or we haven't done it in a while. It's time to update those. And then I just want to make sure everyone understands that when we talk about all this home hardening and this defensible space, the most important thing to start with is your home. Some of the things that have come out of Paradise, right? The roof, get those needles cleaned out, keep those roofs clean. Your vents, those things that I'm telling you, extremely important. We want to keep those embers out. We want to ember proof our house as much as we can. And I'm going to tell you, you know, I've had an assessment done at my house. I had to do this as training. It wasn't fun. It's a lot. This is a lot. It's a plan, right? It's not something you can do over the weekend. It's just something to kind of take in and just tackle a little at a time. That 0 to 5 space is so important to stop the fire from touching your home. Okay. And I know I encounter a lot of gardeners. I've had gardeners tell me, you know, they didn't like it that I came. And I was okay with that. I understand that. I love to garden too. We just have to do it differently. We just have to rethink how we do it. You know, we want to save our home. It's valuable, right? It's all of our life things, the things we've collected. And memories, all the things. So, you know, you just really want to focus on that. And there are ways of doing a 0 to 5 that are not ugly. Lots of options. It's a rabbit hole. You can go out on the internet and you can search. I've been to some homes with some great 0 to 5s. You can do it as expensively or inexpensively as you want. It's just a matter of just start looking, you know, just rake, clean up, just start there. That's just like the best place to start, right? You don't have to do everything this weekend, but make a plan for it. You know, where can you start? How can you just do the stuff that's easy and that just goes step by step? It's just so important. I just want to say, start with your house.
And you know, a few years back, right, the rule of thumb was a 2-foot apron around your house of stone. And I did that. And now I'm looking and I'm going, 5 feet now. So I'm rethinking it and I'm looking again at the plants. And last summer we limbed up some trees. We didn't quite get them to that 6 to 10 foot so you could walk around. But at least we got them limbed up a bit and we got the duff raked out from under those trees that was really thick, and that stuff will burn and catch fire. Now it's back down to organic soil. But the wonderful thing is now I've lived with it for a year and I'm looking at the trees and I realize I can go back and I could limb them up another foot or two and I can get under them and rake so much more easily and get those pine cones out of there. And now we can mow the grasses around the trees and have a really nice border of cut grass much further out around the trees. So take those steps one at a time, get something done, check it off. I'm going to do something this month, going to try to do something next month, live with it, look at it, do a little bit more, start to get active and talk with your HOA. See what the board can do in terms of your operating funds for that landscape maintenance, for maintenance around the homes, to add these scope of works into your operations budget, and you just get a good start.
For sure.
And I would just add, you are the HOA. And so you need to make your voices heard for what you think is important. And the other thing that I learned was that wherever the needles collect as the wind blows them and the leaves collect in the fall when the aspen trees drop their leaves and other things, and where they collect, those same wind forces are what sends embers.
Yep.
And so they are likely to collect in the same places. So if you by your front door, you get these huge buildup of leaves or pine needles, it's really important to keep ahead of it. We've learned from the Marshall Fire on New Year's Eve, I think, that fire can happen anytime, especially in drought conditions. So keep up with it and do as Chris said, what you're comfortable with. And for many people, what they're comfortable with today, they're comfortable with a little more tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I have shared the link again in the chat box. Again, that link, it's just going to be a document with lots of links on it. Okay. And it's going to have, there's insurance on there. There's slash information. There's information to get to me, all kinds of different information. So please, please check it out. And, after we have this presentation, if you think of a question that you were unable to think of tonight, you email me. I'm pretty good with email. I generally get back to people. So, please feel free to reach out. I want to help. I want to, be a resource for you. That's my job. I represent you. You're part of the district. I work for the district. So let me do that for you. Let me be a resource for you.
And I just want to, John Crane has posted some information about insurance. There's a link on the Genesee Fire website to a video. It's about 45 minutes from, and it's put out by a group called United Policy Owners. It's actually a consumer group that deals with insurance issues. And I think it's called, Does Your Safety Net Have Holes in It? And I found it very helpful. I look at my insurance policy and I get glassy-eyed. This tells you how to read your policy and how to assess whether your policy is adequate or not. They make the point that this is not something you should do after you've been impacted by fire because it's too late. It's something that you want to do now.
That link is directly on that document as well. I thought I put it on there. So it is on there. Exactly.
Yeah, I just spent an hour with my State Farm agent. State Farm has an incredible computer program now that takes you through every room in your house, and the house as a whole and the outside, and gets to what is likely a good amount for your current level in this market, in this region for coverage. And then talk with State Farm. It happens to be that debris removal, all those problems after the emergency is covered in their calculations. But things like an endorsement that covers your rebuild, now that you might have to deal with new safety codes, getting your Jeffco permits, for example, and they'll give you can look at for, a little kind of a small amount per year, somewhere between 20 to 50% of value that you can add on to an endorsement. And that will cover you for, it's not just replacement costs, but now all the new costs to do things differently to meet code. And there's a couple of other ones in there for service lines and whatnot. But just try to block out an hour and call your agent and go through some of those things.
So in answer to the question, is the HOA going to clear needles from the roof and cut branches away from the roof? You have to tell them that that's what you want, that that's what needs to be done. Again, you are the HOA. And you need to make your voices heard. And if you have a wildfire committee, those are the people who should be doing that.
Yep. All right. If there are no other questions, I'm going to say thank you for joining us for this presentation this evening. We really appreciate your attendance. Again, this is recorded. It will be available to you probably definitely by the end of the day tomorrow. It'll be on our website. Please feel free to reach out to me. Again, I have put the link in the chat box. So if you have not gone there, click on the chat box, click on that link that I put in there. It will open in another tab. All right. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. And hope to see you around.
Tell your neighbors to watch the video that Dory's going to post.
Yeah, very exciting.
Thank you, ladies.